Let's see. Okay, so welcome everyone. I hope that you had a great weekend. Today we have the pleasure to host and welcome the European Investment Bank. With us there is Kolev, Atanas, who will introduce themselves. Atanas, thank you very much for being with us. We really appreciate the floor is yours.
Please remember before starting the rules for the day, yeah? Sergio, if you want to remind students.
Yeah, remember to have the cameras on, please, and also that unmute your microphones unless you have any question, but this will be during the Q&A session. So please remember to have the cameras on because it's more dynamic and more visual, this presentation. Thank you.
If you have any questions, we will dedicate the last part of the session to the questions. And if there's something very urgent during the session, you can write in the chat. So Sergi and myself will be controlling this. Okay. Okay, so thank you. The floor is yours, Atanas.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah, obviously, if you can just let me know that there is a question in the chat, I can stop and answer it immediately. I don't mind that. So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for waking up early and connecting to this talk. My name is Atanas Kolev, and I am going to talk a little bit about the European Investment Bank and what is the work of an economist in the EIB. As I said, well, European Investment Bank, I will talk also about the European Investment Bank Group, which is composed of two entities. So this is the outline of the talk. I hope you see the presentation. I will briefly explain who we are at the EIB, what we do more generally as an institution, and then I go to talk about what typically what economists do in the EIB. And as I am coming from the economics department, I will talk more about the economics department, but I also mention other places where economists work in the bank. Then I have a couple of slides of telling you why I think the EIB is a good employer, and I have a very short explanation about the recruitment and contract types and selection process, but obviously this is not my specialization. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. The personnel department of the EIB is there to answer these questions if you have them. And at the end, we certainly have a time for questions and answers. All right. So as I said, I'm talking about the EIB, but also about the EIB Group. And the EIB Group is composed of the European Investment Bank and its subsidiary, the European Investment Fund, where the EIB holds about 60% of the shares, while the EIB is mostly lending money and providing technical assistance. The European Investment Fund is focused more on SMEs, providing guarantees, equity finance, and the like. Now, the EIB has been founded with the contract in Rome. That was the founding document for the European institutions. However, the EIB is not a European institution. It's an international organization that is obviously owned by the European Union. Our shareholders are the 27 member states of the EU. The way the EIB works is, well, we have all member states have subscribed capital. It's about 250 billion euros. So we borrow against this capital on the capital markets. at very low rates, as our borrowing rating is AAA, and we lend this money on quite favorable conditions to projects, mostly in Europe, but also around the world. Well, that's the capital structure of the EIB. We have three major shareholders: Germany, France, and Italy, that hold nearly 90% of the capital of the EIB each. Spain is the fourth largest shareholders, and then you can see all the others, all the other 27 member states with their proximate shares. All those that don't have numbers hold less than 1% of EIB capital. The way the capital is subscribed is each country subscribes capital according to its share in European GDP. So obviously the biggest economies hold the largest the capital shares. So what do we do in the EIB? So the bread and butter of the EIB is obviously lending. We give loans typically to projects, financing, infrastructure, R&D, roads and ports and all these things. We also give guarantees. We guarantee loans. Oftentimes, since after the global financial crisis, we do so. Also, we guarantee trade financing as well on top of investment, but that's a bit of a side business. And the EIB is allowed also to take equity participation stakes, and this is also a relatively new feature of our business. About 10 years old or so, and this is kind of the pure EIB or the basic most common business that we have. What we also do, however, is something that we call blending, which means that we engineer financial products together, mostly together with the European Commission, where the European Commission puts up money from the European Structural and Investment Funds, and we put lending in it. Typical, or one of the most popular products in this blending thing is the project bond initiative. This is something like, this is a financial product, a bond, whereby the Commission guarantees the first loss on the bond. That is, for instance, a company issues a bond, the European Commission issues a guarantee on the first loss of, say, 20% on the bond, and we lend the money to that company. This is done so as to take a little bit of the risk or that companies bear, it's oftentimes, most of the times done to correct market failures. Similar thing also for high risk projects. We have similar blended products when we lend to innovation. We have a special lending facility called the InnovFin. The third and I would say also a very important part of our business is advising. That is, we provide technical assistance. Technical assistance here means that we help potential borrowers to prepare their projects, to evaluate them, and to implement them. And these are typically public sector. We don't do that normally with private sector, but these are typically, cities, municipalities, subnational governments, but also some governments, whereby we help with them with the preparation of their project. And this is not tied to afterwards lending to this project, so that we can help prepare a great project, and this project can be then financed with other sources of financing. There are no strings attached here. Now, we probably saw on an earlier slide, but the EIB is the largest multilateral bank or international financial institution, at least by asset size. So we're not so many, as you will see later. We're 3 times or more than 3 times fewer than the employees of the World Bank. But our balance sheet is much bigger, and that's because we lend a lot of money every year on a very long-term basis. So, for instance, last year the EIB signed contracts to the tune of 63 billion euros, and the European Investment Fund did so for about 10 billion euros. So the overall signatures of loans and equity financing for the EIB group last year was 73.5 billion euros. So that's a lot of money. It comes every year. So it adds up to a big asset side of more than €500 billion. Now the EIB has 4 focal areas that we consider a priority, and we lend money only in these kind of priorities. So first of all, and obviously, well, the important thing for you as economists is that all these areas are related to some sort of market failures or externalities that justify the intervention of a public institution like the EIB. So the EIB's priorities are SME financing of small businesses, financing infrastructure, climate and environment, and R&D and innovation. So as you can see, I've put down the numbers that the EIB lent to all these areas over the past year, and they're obviously quite impressive, as you've seen the overall number. I should say, and I probably later explain, most of this is in Europe, so that explains a little bit our advantage to other financial institutions. So what are the benefits of the EIB loan? Why would people want to borrow from the EIB? Well, first of all, as I said, the EIB borrows money on capital markets at very, very low rates, and as we are a non-for-profit institution, we don't charge profit in our pricing. So basically, we lend at a lower cost, lower than the market normally. Now, why is that? Well, because we are trying to correct normally a market failure. So there is an economic reason why we would subsidize or undercut the private market, which normally one shouldn't. Okay, so in addition to the very low rates that we lend, we can mobilize very large amounts. The EIB can lend to the tune of €500 million or 1 billion euros without a problem, without having to make syndicated loans and all these things. So we can lend very large amounts. We can do that in a broad range of currencies. The EIB itself issues bonds on a wide variety of capital markets in different currencies. We provide very long maturities. We can go up to 30 or 40-year loans, which is not that common, especially in the corporate sector. As I said, interest rates are very attractive. On top of that, well, the EIB serves as a catalyst for participation of other banking and financial institutions, because the EIB does a very careful due diligence of every project. So once we certify that that project is good and we lend, many other financiers are willing to lend as well. That said, this normally happens because the EIB does not lend more than 50% of the project cost. So there's typically the promoter has to fund other sources of funds. There are tiny little exception to this rule, which I may mention, or if you're interested, you ask me, I'll tell you further. Now, what are the two main products when it comes to lending that we have? Well, first of all, we have direct loans, but we do direct loans only for large projects. So anytime we should lend more than 25 million euros, we do that using direct loans. So we lend directly to the promoter of the project. And there are the intermediated loans, which are typically small loans to small and medium size enterprises. And that lending we do through financial intermediaries. So the way it works is we lend to a bank that has a portfolio of loans of SMEs. So that bank would on lend this money to smaller projects of small and medium-sized enterprises, and they commit to transmit part of the low interest rate advantage to the SMEs. Clearly, credit risk pricing is done by the intermediary, by the commercial bank, so that they don't transfer the whole interest rate benefit that the EIB has, as they have to bear for afterwards the credit risk on the loan. Now, all projects that are to be financed by the EIB have to meet certain requirements. Well, first of all, they have to meet the EIB objectives, and I wonder if you recall at least one of the 4 objectives that I mentioned before. If anyone wants to share, to tell us what were they, you invited to participate.
Innovation.
Innovation, that's right. Innovation and R&D, yes.
Environment.
Environment and climate, that's right.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, of course. And the 4th one that I just spoke on the previous slide, financing of SMEs. So each of the projects that applies for a loan to the EIB has to be in one of these areas. For it has to meet the criteria in this respect. It has to be technically sound, meaning that the project has to have good engineering grounds. A well done project. It has to be financially viable. That is, it has to return the money that is invested in it. Otherwise, we are not allowed really to lend except on a really exceptional circumstances. And it has to show an acceptable economic return. And economic return here means not only financial viability, but it has to have a social value. And in order to check that, we go through a cost-benefit analysis, and I'll talk a little bit about this later on. Now, finally, all projects must comply with very strict environmental protection and also procurement regulations that we not only use in the EU, but we export in all our lending outside the EU when we lend to countries outside the European Union. Well, this is the one of the most important charts in EIB speak. It's the so-called project cycle, and it's a schematic representation of how of the life of a project that is financed by the EIB. And it all starts with loan officers identifying project opportunities. They talk to customers and they discuss different projects. Once a project is identified as potential for the EIB, the promoter applies and sends all project documentation to our project directorate. And there we have economists, engineers, and other specialists who would appraise the project, and they would look at its financial, economic, social, environment, and technical values, and try and make a final assessment, which is written down in the final project evaluation report, basically summarized in one number: what is the economic and social return of this project. Then with this report, the potential project goes to the management committee, our governing body, or the executive, that reviews and approves it. But in order for this to be finally approved, it has to go through the approval of the board of directors, which is the oversight body of the EIB. So once board of directors approve the project, the loan is considered approved, and then the loan officers negotiate with the promoter the contract terms, and the contract gets signed, and money is disbursed. Now, money is disbursed, so the project gets going, but at this time, we have our specialists in the project directorate who have appraised the project typically to monitor physically how the project is done, whether it's done according to the parameters it has that were approved. And we also have our transaction and management directorate monitor the financial covenants of the contract, and this goes throughout the whole project until repayment. So that can be a very lengthy thing. You can go for 20 years or so. Okay. Now this is the sketch of what the EIB normally does, and as I said, there are a number of economists and the EIB. I now take a little bit of time to talk about what economists in the EIB do. And I'll focus on the economics department where I work, and on the projects directorate that evaluates projects and employs very many economists as well. Well, starting with my favorite economics department, of course, this is a chart that summarizes the typical activities that we have. So basically, we're there to conduct applied economic research and inform the EIB management about economic issues and important policy issues. Now, the research agenda normally evolves around the EIB investment report. So that's a big book that we publish every year and contains a number of different issues and topics that we analyze and that are a result of the research that we normally do. And a big data source for this research is the EIB investment survey, which is an important part of our work. Every year we interview more than 12,000 firms around Europe, as well as in the US, in order to gather information about investment and investment financing. Now, we also have an annual economic conference. That is the time where we promote our investment report and we discuss key issues on economic policy. Throughout the year, we hold regular economic debates on different topics. We have our research seminars regularly in the department, and we do a number of thematic reports, not only for the EU but also the outside the EU regions. So that's a bit the research work, but we do a lot more. We have country desk economists that look at the macroeconomic situation of countries where the EIB works. We do sovereign and banking ratings. We do economic scenario for the stress tests of the EIB. We also are part of the project team when we have financial sector operations outside the EU. And we also provide strategic input to EIB decision making on a number of different issues and topics. Now the economics department is structured into 3 divisions. The one that I'm in is the most research oriented one. It's called economic studies, and we do we organize and produce the annual investment report, also with input of economists outside our division, from the economics department, from the projects director, but also from external to the EIB people. We organize and manage the EIB investment survey that I mentioned, and we do a number of different, in addition to our working paper series and our published work, we also do a number of different policy studies, and I've just mentioned a couple of more recent ones, the EIB COVID Economic Vulnerability Index, and the other one that deals with startup and growth of companies in Europe. We also coordinate and centralize the production of economic intelligence and data and statistics within the department. And the people in the division have certain sectoral expertise. We focus on the 4 main activities, or 4 main areas for the EIB. Then the other division at the EIB are the country and financial sector analysis division, which is kind of a country desk, where country desk economists do credit ratings. They score the banking sectors, estimate foreign exchange premia every time when the EIB has to lend in local currency. Say, as I given an example, whenever we lend in local currency in Africa, for instance, my colleagues estimate the foreign exchange premium that we charge on the loan. We also provide the macroeconomic background for our operations outside the EU. We estimate the expected results from our financial sector operations. For instance, how many jobs were created or expected to be created as a state in the future, what would be the impact on GDP, and so on and so forth. And colleagues in that division also write a number of briefing and reports on topics related to developing countries and emerging market economies. And they also produce a major report called Banking in Africa. The third division in our department is the so-called Policy and Strategy division. Well, they are charged with implementing the macroeconomic impact assessment of EIB operations. That is, they run a big model that we've borrowed from the European Commission Joint Research Center in Sevilla. And it's called, the model is a large-scale dynamic general equilibrium model called the Romulo. So we use that model to assess the macroeconomic impact of EIB operations. That is how many jobs and what size of, or how much output EIB lending contributes normally. That division also create and maintain the results measurement framework for our lending operations outside the EU. and they also produce a bunch of country reports for the countries where we operate. That's for the economics department. The projects directorate is a cornerstone at the EIB. So as I said, this directorate appraises and assesses all potential projects and then follows them through operation. So economists there have a very clear sectoral specialization, though. So they would appraise projects, say, in the water sector only, or in the transport sector only, or in renewable energies only, for instance. So they have a narrow sectoral specialization where they do economic and financial appraisal. They typically use the cost-benefit framework, but also they use many other methods to do their job and to make the best possible estimate of the value of the project. So they, as I mentioned, economists there and engineers, of course, follow the project during construction and implementation, and they produce sectoral studies and country sector analysis to inform EIB management. So what are we at the EIB group? So I finished talking about the economic side, and I briefly walk you through the EIB life. Now the EIB headquarters are in Luxembourg, but we also have a network of local offices around the world. We're nearly 3,500 people together with the EIF, and there are 29 different nationalities in the EIB officially. And there are many others that have an EU nationality, basically. So it's a very multicultural and multilingual environment at the EIB, and this is something that I really appreciate. Okay, so why work at the EIB? So most of the colleagues that you would ask, why are they there? Well, typically that's the mission of the EIB, to improve lives of people in the EU, but only also in many developing countries. So that this is a certain big driver, motivation of most people who work in the bank. But you know, working at the EIB is also very nice because it, as I mentioned, it's a multicultural environment. Having worked there for that many years, for me it's difficult to imagine that I would go back working only with Bulgarians or only with Spaniards or only with Germans. That sounds to me nowadays difficult to imagine. The EIB offers a great work-life balance. We have a number of sport and recreational facilities, and we have typically a decent working time and time to take care of ourselves. Now, working conditions are excellent at the EIB. We have great facilities, great building that you might have seen most, and we're building a new one as the EIB is expanding quite a lot. The EIB takes care for our professional development, organizing internal courses, but also paying external courses for us. So we support it and encourage to continue learning and improving throughout our careers. And EIB is a great place to teamwork. So nearly every project involves a financial specialist, credit specialists, risk managers, economists, engineers. So every time you work on something, you have to work and meet with many other different people and try and get a common project. Now, all this said, well, the EIB is stuck in the middle of Europe in a very small country called Luxembourg. It's surrounded by Belgium, Germany, and France. And it is a very rich, Unnaturally, that is not the word. A country that stands out from the rest of Europe because of its size and its high incomes as a little bit different from all of them. I mean, Luxembourg is an expensive place, but it's also rather calm, and also many people think a bit boring. Now, that said, Luxembourg has an enormous offer of cultural events given its size. So the city is just 150,000 people, and the whole country is about 500,000. But that said, it has a lot to offer in terms of cultural activities. Beautiful buildings. This, if you can see, this one is at the down right corner is the Philharmonie, a beautiful building. At the top of this row is the EIB building, and in between is the European Court of Justice. So, as I said, the country is small. It may be a little bit. Sorry about that. It may be a little bit boring for some, but as you can see, this train here, that's the TGV, which takes you to Paris in just 2 hours. And that's one of the highlights of the city, I would say. So you can take the train at 8 in the morning and be back at 8 in the evening and spend a nice day in Paris. So that's my, in a nutshell, living in Luxembourg. So I will just quickly end with how the EIB selects its employees. So the EIB, as I said, is not a European institution, so we don't go through public contests, and we don't have the status of public servant. So EIB manages its own selection and recruitment process. All vacancies are published on the EIB website, and all applications are online. First of all, the personnel department screens all the CVs, and those CVs that correspond to the criteria of the job applications are then passed on to the different areas that recruit. There are online and on-site tests. You do typically a pre-recorded interview, and finally the short list of candidates are interviewed by business line people and by personnel. So the opportunities at the EIB are in three very broad areas. There are internships, the grad program, and the professionals. Professionals are people who typically have at least 3, but typically many more than 3 years of relevant professional experience. They're typically hired on an initial 4-term contract that might be converted into an indefinite contract afterwards. The grad program is designed for people like you who have just graduated. They have less than 2 years of experience. And the idea of this program is to hire people and to give the initial boost in their careers. That is, for them to get experience, to learn, and to develop further on, most likely outside the EIB. So people in this program typically get contracts between 1 and 4 years. Well, between 1 and 4 years, but the typical thing is 2 or 3 years. So this is probably the most interesting program for you. That said, it is very small, so that not many people are hired there. And we also have the internship programs where every 6 months we hire in the economics department 6 people, but also throughout the EIB a bit more. These are typically people who have just finished their master program, are still there doing their master or their PhD. We have 2 intakes in March and September. these are paid internships with a rather modest pay for the costly life in Luxembourg, and all the internships are also published on the website together with all jobs at the EIB. That's all. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. You can find the information and the job announcements of the EIB on the EIB webpage, on the EIF webpage, but also in LinkedIn, at the EIB YouTube channel. Okay, so that's all from me. Of course, if you have questions now, I'm really happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Atanas. I believe we have time for one quick question. Let's see if there's someone that have a question.
I'm wondering if you could just confirm. So do you need to be an EU national to work for the EIB?
That's right. You have to have a EU nationality or be a Turkish national to be hired. Now due to Brexit, we have many UK colleagues from Britain. They obviously are retained in the EIB, but we don't hire British nationals, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Let's see if there's another question, if it's quick. If not, unfortunately, we will need to end the presentation because now we have some of them have one-to-one meetings. So, Atanas.
Sergey, sorry to interrupt you. If people have questions, they can certainly follow up by email. You can share my email with the colleagues who are in the presentation, so that I make up a little bit for me being late. All right.
Thank you very much, Atanas, for being here with us, presenting all this amazing presentation. Let's move now to the one-to-one meetings, and to all of them, thank you for the participation. And as Atanas said, that if you have any question, you can send it an email, and they will be glad to answer you. So have a nice day. And the ones that have the one-to-one meeting, let's move to the other link. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.